Welcome on into the First Round Fantasy Podcast, your home for second round advice. I'm realizing it's very dark in my room right now, Jacob, and you're very bright. It's a contrast of our days and how they've been going, I guess. I've had a very dark and gloomy day. Have you had a very good day today, Jacob Bartley?
Yeah, I have, but I'm hearing a strong echo right now.
Uh-oh,
I don't
is it
know
from
what's
me?
going
Let's
on.
see. I guess everybody has echoes every now and again. We have testing.
Are you hearing echo?
I'm not hearing an echo at all. I just hear your beautiful voice.
Interesting. Okay, it's just my end then. I don't know what's going on.
Well, while Jacob troubleshoots that, I'll welcome us into the show.
All right, I figured
Uh,
it out.
and just like that,
That was a great start.
we're tech geniuses around here.
Yep.
I'm Gabriel Maramontes, joined by Jacob Bartley. This is First Round Fantasy, where we offer you first round fantasy content, second round advice. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at First Round Fantasy, or here where our beautiful faces are, YouTube at First Round Fantasy, or wherever you get your podcasts, most notably Spotify and Apple Premium. Jacob, let's just get right into it today. I guess we can address some love. Stardew says I was right, by the way. I don't know what that was, but thanks, man. I appreciate it. He's always here. Tyler Cooper in the chat. I did not wear the shirt again, but I will say it again. Coach Coop Gaming, man. Check him out. He's there. He's live
Oh, you got a
almost every
shirt?
night. Yeah, I bought some Coach Coop. It says hashtag listen to the coach. It's pretty cool. To be honest, I actually took it and wore it about. Like, I went to Home Depot the other day, Lowe's, just a couple of errands, like Wink. I went grocery shopping, and I noticed that because it has a hashtag on it, a lot of the young kids were very attracted to what it said because they're so used to the hashtag something.
Yeah.
So it was getting a lot of looks. So Coach Coop, I don't know if that was your idea or not, but you better hope. I hope that's copyrighted, man, because people seem to be gravitated towards it. But go check him out on Facebook Gaming. Enough about other people. We got to focus about us. Are you ready to get into our dark horses and fool's gold this week?
I am. Yes.
Sure. You were not here this week, Jake. Last week, Jacob. I hope you were doing okay. Yes, I just foreshadowing there, or I guess I don't know what I'm saying. I realize that half the time I don't know what I'm saying, even when it comes to fantasy football. But that's why it's second round content, baby. I was right last week though. I went with for our dark horses. I was actually incorrect, but I want to talk about that. It was AJ Dillon, running back for the Green Bay Packers, and one of the reasons that I was incorrect was just because he didn't outperform his sleeper projection, which I believe was around 10 fantasy points. I will say this: he had 4 goal line carries. I feel like if he gets any one of those 4 goal line carries, and 3 of them were on one drive, if he gets any one of those, that's a hit. That's a 12-point fantasy day. That's exactly what I said. So, AJ Dillon, convert next time. That's all I got to say. Okay? That's all I got to say. Jacob, did you want to go first this week since I so commonly always forget you? Do you want to jump in and lead us off since you took a week off? Just come right out. Give us the hot take. Who is your dark horse for week 10? Believe it or not, week 10 of the fantasy football season.
Believe that we are this far. But yeah, my dark horse this week is a guy that I've talked about plenty of times before, and that is Khalil Herbert of the Chicago Bears. Now, I know, look, a lot of people are into this player as much as I am in general, but the way that fantasy works is a lot of casual fans, they just look at the fantasy points, right? So they see, 15, and then 2 points. What happened? All right, I'm benching him next week. And I think that's a mistake. He didn't play the toughest run defense, but Justin Fields was the lead running back last week for the Chicago Bears. As most of people can see, there was no room for David Montgomery or Khalil Herbert to get any run. And I'm not saying Justin Fields is going to slow down his look. He's not going to go for 178 yards again, but I'm not saying he's going to stop rushing. I just think it's going to balance itself out a little bit more. He's going to rush a little bit less. The running backs are going to rush a little bit more. You don't want to, I'm not saying they're competing for a playoff, a deep playoff run or anything, but you don't want to burn your young stud QB out. At least he's looking like a stud. So you want to utilize these running backs, and they're playing Detroit, who is a top 10 friendliest defense to the running game. And for about a year now, I've been on the Khalil Herbert is more talented than David Montgomery train. And I think that's starting to come to fruition, and a lot of more people are starting to see it. I also think, look, running back years are like dog years, right? Like they add up a lot quicker. And
I
Khalil
like that
Herbert,
analogy there. That's a good analogy.
has, even though he's only a couple years younger than Montgomery and only has one less year or 2 less years in the NFL, that's a lot of time and in running back years. So I think he's just fresher overall. They were kind of like splitting carries, and we saw, even though Montgomery was getting more work, Khalil Herbert was out producing him. So I think that's going to continue. I think this could be the week where we see Khalil Herbert really take over the backfield. So yeah, that's my dark horse for week 10. I can't believe we're in week 10. It feels like it just started.
It feels like it just started. And man, I couldn't agree with you much more. I'm looking at his average yards per carry over the last couple of weeks. Last week against Miami, it wasn't too great, but before that, 6.1 a carry, 5.1 a carry, 10 yards per carry. That was his 7 carry performance for 70 yards. Looking over at David Montgomery's, 2.5, 3.5, 4.0. Not terrible, right? Not terrible, but there's clearly a running back there who still has a little bit more juice in the tank. And you're alluding to the fact that is Khalil Herbert. He looks to get something done this week. Bounce back game potentially against a really soft Detroit Lions rushing defense, who I thought last week, AJ Dillon, which was my dark horse, who we were just talking about earlier, was a going to find pay dirt essentially, and he did not. Hopefully, it fares much better for you, my friend. That is Jacob Bartley's dark horse of the week, Khalil Herbert, running back for the Chicago Bears. Nice pick, Jacob. Nice pick. Let's see here. Lions and Bears could be an amazing game. You can always count on Star Drew for like 5 or 6 potential shootout games, and like 3 of them coming to fruition. So yes, Star Drew, you are the predictable shootout guy here.
A couple times Star Drew called them out and we were like, nah, and then it ended up being a shootout. So maybe he's onto something.
Yeah, you know what? Sometimes if you aim high, you fall among the stars, and that's what he's doing, man. And that's why
True.
he is Star Drew. All right.
There you go. Hey, that makes sense.
He's falling amongst the stars. Tyler Cooper says Jeff Wilson or Claypool this week. Hey, Tyler, I'm going to be sending you a trade offer in the next couple of minutes. Let's make sure that you finally accept this one, because I think you're going to like it.
Live trade offers. There we go.
I think you're going to wait, hold on. Now,
we've had 1 or 2 live trades over the year on the show.
I know. I'm going to get this one off right now, Tyler. Stay with me, buddy. Stay with me.
It's definitely going to get declined.
No, it's not. It is sent. It is sent.
This is great radio, guys. Great radio.
Sorry. Just make sure. I go with Jeff Wilson there, and we'll talk about him in just a second. He also says Disley or Njoku. I like Njoku this week. Week 10, coming back healthy, coming back strong, should have an immediate impact like he did before he left. So Jeff Wilson and David Njoku. Jacob, I hope you feel the same way.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Oh, yeah, no, for sure. Great. Let's talk about my dark horse this week, week 10. And that is just who we were talking about. Jeff Wilson Jr., running back, new running back for the Miami Dolphins. Last week in week 9, we saw him split carries with Raheem Mostert. They both had 9 carries last week. Just an even split, even very similar snap share as well. But one important point that kind of was the narrative that I'm trying to paint here was the passing down work. I don't know if you watched the game, Jacob. That was a great game to watch. Tua slinging the ball over the field, Justin Fields slinging the ball over the field. When you have red zone and the game is predominantly just showing the Dolphins and the Bears, you know it's a good game. I felt like watching red zone the entire first 2.5 hours was the Bears and Dolphins game. It was a great game. But one thing I did notice and one thing I did see was the potential of what could be for Raheem Mostert's future with the Miami Dolphins, and that is revolving around the pass catching work. There was a play, Raheem Mostert within the 20s uh, on let's see, Chicago's side of the field. Probably didn't have a guy within 5 or 6 yards of him. Justin Field throws him a dime piece, beautiful, right through the hands, hits him on the helmet. Raheem Mostert doesn't see another target for the rest of the game. He didn't come in with his previous target before that. Meanwhile, on the other hand, newly acquired Jeff Wilson Jr. catches 3 passes for 21 yards, finds the end zone on one of them. This week, I don't even think he needs to find the end zone. If he keeps that same production, the 3 catches for 21, and he stays efficient on the ground, I think he had 54 yards. That's still a day that sees him succeed or exceed 10 fantasy points. I think he can do a little bit more than that this week. His sleeper projection right now is right around 9.5 fantasy points. No. We're going a little bit higher than that. We're taking it next level. And like I said, I think he can do it without the TDs if he continues to get that passing down work. One of the other things that's also been kind of interesting to me relating to like what Miami's been doing with their backfield post trade deadline and leading up into the trade deadline, trading Chase Edmonds, who necessarily didn't really work out that well, is that I kind of started looking at Mostert for what he is. He's a 30-year-old running back in the NFL, and there's not a lot of them out there this day and age. Sure, there's Rex Burkhead in Houston. Yes, there's Cordell Patterson. And I want to really focus on Cordell Patterson. I thought this was just kind of an interesting fact. In their careers up to this point, Cordell Patterson has had 394 carries to Jeff Wilson Jr.'s 391. And actually, that's flip-flopped. Jeff Wilson Jr. has 394 carries, so 3 more carries than Cordell Patterson. Obviously, Jeff Wilson Jr. or Raheem Mostert is 2 years younger. But it's interesting to me to see the dynamics of how these teams are working these running backs. And I think we're going to see more and more. Cordell Patterson just missed 4 games on the IR, comes back. He doesn't come back to the workload that we were seeing him have before he got injured, right? He only had 7 or 8 carries. He was efficient with them. He saw the touchdown. He also got the passing down work. I see a similar thing with Raheem Mostert. They need a bruising back. Sure, Raheem Mostert got the goal line touchdown. He got the goal line carry. He's also very brittle. He's not as durable as Cordell Patterson has been up until recently. With that being said, I think that's another reason why they brought Jeff Wilson back, a guy that can kind of get in between the tackles, do that dirty work. And clearly, we see him a lot better with the hands as well in the passing game. So for those 2 reasons, for Jeff Wilson to be successful this week and for weeks to come, he needs to get the goal line carries, which I think he can get, and he needs to get the passing down work, which I think he can get. Not to mention, both of these running backs were in San Francisco when Mike McDaniels was the offensive coordinator, so clearly he sees something in both of them. But from an article I read just a couple of weeks ago, I believe it was Fantasy Pros, it was the narrative that they were painting was that while both were in San Francisco, Jeff Wilson Jr. ran like 70% of the passing down works when both of them were on the same team together. So just kind of paints a picture that this is what we can expect from Jeff Wilson Jr. to come. And I think it fits in nicely with his matchup this week. A couple of guys that I like that I would start. I always get this part screwed up. That's what I think is so funny is you think I would have figured it out by now. A lot of guys that I like less than Jeff Wilson Jr. this week are Michael Pittman at Las Vegas, Curtis Samuel, who had the huge fluke touchdown. He goes against Philadelphia this week. Cortland Sutton against Tennessee, Drake London, and a couple of running backs. Najee Harris, a workhorse running back against New Orleans, and James Conner, who just came back last week off of injury for the Arizona Cardinals. For those and those reasons alone, that is my dark horse for the week, Jeff Wilson Jr. Jacob, thoughts?
Yeah, it's a great choice, man. I think once he was traded there, I didn't really tell this to anyone because I wanted to pick him up in every league, and I so mad because we play in our keeper league. Not that I would keep Jeff Wilson in the future. I'm just saying that's the league I'm talking about, where he was on the waiver wire, and I wanted to pick him up so bad. Like this was before this previous week, and I didn't have room for him because of all my players were on bye. So I was rostering 2 defenses, 3 tight ends because
Yeah.
all my players were on bye, and I didn't want to drop Freiermuth or Kittle or my Niners defense. So I left Jeff Wilson out on the waivers, and then he gets picked up for 250 fab out of 1,000. So I'm like, man, I should have grabbed him. I should have just dropped one of these bums on my bench. But I had a feeling that he was going to take the role over immediately. And it looks like that's going to happen because you think about it. McDaniel was a running back coach in San Francisco. Jeff Wilson's younger. He's fresher. Nothing against Mostert. He was doing a great job as a starting running back in Miami, but
He was.
it just makes logical sense that Jeff Wilson's going to kind of take over this role. And honestly, if I'm Mostert, I'm like, thank you. Now I can stay fresh, stay healthy, hopefully be a part of this playoff run. So it's like, I think it's a win-win for the team. And point being, Jeff Wilson's going to ball out for Miami, especially when he has a good matchup.
Well, I couldn't thank you enough for agreeing with me. And just like we said, Jeff Wilson Jr., running back for the Miami Dolphins, my dark horse of the week for week 10 of the fantasy football season. Jacob, I got some news to break for you. There is a trade alert. Tyler Cooper comes in the chat. Got it done. We were talking about Wan'Dale Robinson. It is official. I receive Wan'Dale Robinson. Coach Coop receives Dontrell Hilliard and Cade Otton, tight end for the Buccaneers. I was going to say Broncos. Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Yeah. I like it. I'm piling up on these young wide receivers so I can go QB and running back heavy in the draft. I don't want to get into all that, though, because nobody wants to hear about our league in which I have 6 first-round picks. Hey, it took this is coming from a man who has no QBs to start this week. Let's just say that. So it's not looking pretty this year. And Jacob, has a right to be mad. Maybe he'll get his first round pick back. I don't know yet. But I'm not opposed to it. I've just been busy, man. I've been busy, all right?
I didn't bring it up. You brought it up.
I know, but clearly it's on your mind and it's on mine too. I want to be a good friend. I want to be a good league mate. I want to acknowledge fair trades when there are fair trades.
You have no obligation to trade it back to me, but we can't even have a discussion about it. That's my problem. That's my problem. Like I can be like Josh Allen, CeeDee Lamb, DeAndre Swift. I'll throw in Javonte too, and he'll be like, no. Like, all right, man, cool.
I'm overcoming a sickness, but that did make me laugh. I love you, Jacob Bartley.
A mental sickness.
Best. Oh, mental sickness. Okay, now I hate you, Jacob Bartley. Star Drew, Browns and Dolphins is a tough call for high score of all defenses. I don't know what you're trying to say there, but yeah, I like the Dolphins in that matchup.
Oh, he's saying it's tough to call it being high scoring, like tough to call whether it's going to be high scoring or an all defensive game.
Oh, gotcha.
Star Drew. I've been reading your comments for a few years now, so.
That's good. Hey, we appreciate it, man. We appreciate you so much. You ready to jump into some Fool's Gold, my friend?
I am.
All right, let's do it. Well, you went first last time. There's no way I'm forgetting about you today.
We'll see.
Let's go, Jacob. Give us your Fool's Gold player for week 10 of the fantasy football season.
Yeah, this breaks my heart a little bit because I love this guy, but I got to go with DeAndre Swift as my Fool's Gold for week 10. And look, I'm not saying people aren't aware that he obviously hasn't been producing. He's been injured. He just returned from injury. The coach has said that, look, 2 weeks ago, he had 6 carries. And then Dan Campbell said he had too many carries. We need to ease him back a little bit more. And then he had 2 carries. But the thing is, people look at their fantasy apps and they see, oh, he's projected for 14 fantasy points. And while this could come back around to bite me because DeAndre Swift is so talented and can do so much with so little touches, I believe in the guy. If you can guarantee me every player is fully healthy, I think he's a top 5 running back, no question. But something's wrong here. He's not fully healthy. Dan Campbell said it himself. Sometimes coach speak is literal and they mean it. And he meant it. He took him from 6 carries to 2 carries, and he's still questionable. I'm not, look, he has a decent matchup this week, but I just don't see, look, the Lions are what, 2-7? Or are they 2-6 or 2-7? It's like the smart move for their franchise is, look, if Swift is healthy enough to play, and I know coaches and players have integrity a lot of times, and they just look, if I'm healthy enough to play, I'm going to play, and I understand that, but I just think he's going to be limited no matter what. And it's not like, oh, we have no one else to go to. They have Jamal Williams, who's on his last year of his contract with them. So why, and who's fully healthy? Why wouldn't they just use Jamal Williams? Like, what do they have to lose? And this conversation also worries me. Like, will we ever see Jameson Williams this year? I don't know. Probably not. But and that's irrelevant. Like in redraft, it's probably not going to have an impact anyway. But I just think all signs are pointing towards Swift being a disappointment. And look, I play in a lot of leagues, so I have a league or two where I have to start him because I have no other option. That's fair. I think that's most people's cases, especially with the bye weeks. But I would rather start either of the two guys we talked about over him. I would start Khalil Herbert and Jeff Wilson over him. So I think there, and that's crazy. Like you wouldn't think you'd be saying that at this point in the year, but it's true. I mean, would you agree with that this week?
Yeah, I would agree with it. You were talking about how head coach Dan Campbell came out and said that they're going to look to minimize his workload, and then boom, 6 carries, 2 carries. It's like, what in the world? Like they really are like taking away his workload. This week he did come out and say, I think I'm looking at the CBS Sports article here. Earlier today, he did come out and say we want to increase his workload this week, but still, what is it? He had 2 carries last week.
Exactly.
An increase could be back to 6.
That's what I'm saying. And it's like, even if they increase his workload, it could be all passing work. And then he gets 6 carries and Jamal Williams has 13 carries. And that's just not the volume you're looking for. As we've said time and time again, our fool's gold aren't saying bench this player no matter what. No, that's never the case. It says, look at your lineup, consider it, look at what your other options are, and maybe you pivot. Because in a league where I don't have to start him, I'm not starting him. But I completely get it if you have to start him, because I am doing that as well. But I'm just a little worried about Swift. Not necessarily, like, people were relying on him to be their RB1 this year, like their number 1 running back on their team. And in our main redraft league, Beer Drinkers, I drafted him in the 2nd round. So I drafted Chase and then him, and look how that's turned out for me. I had to fight my way back to an above 500 record. So I just think that, there's teams relying on him, and they might have to figure something else out.
Yeah, man, it's unfortunate. The motto is, or the golden term is, you always start your studs. And let's be honest, DeAndre Swift is a stud.
Of course.
However, we have never seen him get this kind of workload. And you were talking about it earlier about how, like, they're 2-7, they're going nowhere fast. There's a real possibility that they could shut him down. The same situation we're seeing over in Indianapolis right now. And the sad reality is, this has happened to DeAndre Swift his whole career now. It's happened to him the last 2 seasons. True. The Lions have been bad.
A lot of games.
They've shut him down later in the season due to injury.
That's what I'm worried about too.
So it might come time even next year when we're talking about DeAndre Swift, where we just have to look at the Lions as a whole. Are they going to be good? Are they going to contend? Or am I going to draft a guy who already has an injury past, associated with him, who very well could be shut down in week 11 on, because his team started 3-8. Like, oh wait, is that 8? Yeah, 3-8, because the Lions typically do, unfortunately. So I don't disagree with it at all. This is the one stud that I think it's finally okay to say you need to just kind of wait until you see it again. And if he blows up on your bench, at least you're happy that he's going trajectory that He's going in a positive trajectory, right?
Then if he does that, trade him.
uh, it seems to be that way at this point. That was Jacob's Fool's Goal Player of the Week, DeAndre Swift, running back for the Detroit Lions. And if he does, just trade him. Oh,
Yeah,
we're gonna
because they're
get
gonna shut him. They're gonna shut him down eventually.
he'll be a possible candidate that we could talk about a little bit later. Then I like it.
True.
My fantasy season is over. Well, thanks for coming in and telling us, David. We appreciate you, man. Lions and Bears look. I guess that's all I had to say. I don't.
I
Sorry,
have
David.
a secret for you, David, that to help you out with that for next year. Play in like 5 leagues, and at least one of them will work out, and then your fantasy season won't be over.
Fair enough. Hey, good advice. Lions and Bears look good this year.
At times.
At times, sure. Let's do it. At times.
I mean, I think they looked good this past week, even though the Bears lost. The Bears lost, but they were going toe to toe with Miami.
Yep. Well, Jacob,
they look better than the Packers.
Very true. Very true. Speaking of Packers, that's a great segue. What are we doing here? It's like we know this stuff. I didn't plan it either. My Fool's Goal player for Week 10 of the fantasy football season is Allen Lazard, wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers. We were talking before the podcast. I had kind of been exchanging texts with you saying, like, I think I'm really overthinking this. I don't know if Allen Lazard is who I really want to go with this week because let's be honest, you went with DeAndre Swift this week, who's a notable star in the league. I'm going with Allen Lazard. Usually when guys of this caliber, this name recognition, these types of fantasy ceilings that we can see them have, we usually tell you to temper your expectations at the least. And I think that's kind of where I'm coming into terms with Allen Lazard this week. It's not a full fade, but it's definitely a temper your expectations. Okay. They're going up against the Cowboys this week, who have allowed one 100-yard wide receiver on the year so far to date, and only 7 touchdowns given up to receivers so far in their 8 games. Now, that's an average of a touchdown a game, and very well, certainly, Allen Lazard could be the guy to catch that touchdown. He's an end zone threat. He gets a lot of those. I understand that. I can see a world where he is just fine. Okay. So I'm acknowledging that fact. What I am also going to point out is that the Cowboys lead the league in sacks with 33. The Packers line is atrocious. Aaron Rodgers has never played, to my enjoyment, has never played as bad as he has been playing this season, which, for fantasy managers who have drafted him, sure, it's unfortunate. I understand that. And the run game is simply putrid because I'm alluding to A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones last week, who had a juicy matchup and could do nothing with it. The team is in complete disarray. The Cowboys are a formidable opponent who I think will definitely add to that sack count, hurrying Aaron Rodgers, pressuring him throughout the game. That doesn't give him a lot of time to get these passes off. I think guys like Aaron Jones, if he's healthy, A.J. Dillon, if he's healthy, are going to get a Robert Tonyan, if he's healthy, are going to get a lot of these short area passes where he is trying to escape the pocket, get away, and find someone like a safe outlet to get to. I don't know if Allen Lazard is going to be that guy this week. I'm very scared of this offense entirely. Aaron Rodgers is someone who I'm fading. Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon. These are all guys that I'm tentative on playing. Obviously, Aaron Jones, you're starting him if he's out there. Allen Lazard, I'm scared to start him this week. And that's really all I have to say about it. I love Jerry Jeudy at Tennessee. I'd start him over Allen Lazard. I love Devontae Smith this week. Start him over Allen Lazard. I love Rondale Moore, which I think is right around the range where I'd go. I love him this week, and he's going up against Los Angeles Rams. His fantasy point production for the week is 14.5 PPR points. That's according to Sleeper. Temper your expectations. I can definitely see a possibility, the realm of possibilities, where he is in that 5 to 7 PPR points, because eventually at the end of the day, with no Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson in and out of the lineup every single week, Aaron Rodgers has to throw the ball to someone. And that guy is going to be Allen Lazard. But literally, that's the only thing he's going to be able to do. Teams are going to have to zero into him at some point. I think the Cowboys do this week. I think they smother him entirely. Definitely under 14 PPR points, which is the sleeper projection. But also, I would go as far to say probably in that 8 to 10 range is where we see Allen Lazard end up this week. And that's not the wide receiver 2 numbers that you're looking to see week in and week out, which is why I'm telling you right now to temper your expectations on Allen Lazard in week 10. Jacob?
Yeah, I mean, I have trouble starting any Packer right now at all. Like, obviously, Aaron Jones, if he's out there and fully healthy, of course. But, other than that, only one person in your league has him. So, other than that, you're not starting a lot of Packers. And I don't think anyone's starting Aaron Rodgers. And even, like, the only way, look, if Williams is out, I think Dylan you can consider starting him. But as things stand right now, like I'm starting Jeff Wilson over AJ Dillon, no question. Literally, I just made that change in one of my lineups. So looking at Lazard, it's like, how is that? What's the upside there? Like, he's gonna get targeted the most, and he's gonna have 6 catches for 50 yards. Like, cool, 11 points. Even that is like, it's decent, but like that's not what we're looking for. From a number 1 wide receiver of Aaron Rodgers. I'm with you, man. And Dallas has not been good to wide receivers this year.
Not been good to wide receivers. And I'll end with this. So many people have been talking about, Devontae Adams heading to Oakland, and you see all the memes. At least I do, because I'm a Las Vegas Raiders fan. Shouldn't have left Aaron Rodgers, blah, 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 blah. Well, guess what? Both teams are literally bad this year. So can we both just agree that they needed each other? Yeah. It wasn't like Devontae Adams needed Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Rodgers needed – they both needed each other equally because both of their teams are atrocious.
That's evident.
You know what?
Like, it's
no more memes. Stop the meme talk. There's hate all around. And that is my fool's gold player for week 10 of the fantasy football season, Allen Lazard, wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers. Yeah, man. I'm just tired of it. I'm tired of it, dude.
Hey, I bet you there's just as many Packer memes out there, though. You probably just don't see them but
yeah, that's true. I don't see him because I'm not a cheesehead. Nice overlay. Oh, wait. I don't know what that means. Did he take away our
I know
overlay?
What it means.
That's producer Berlin. And no, not the Berlin Wall. He's stronger than that. He ain't coming down. Jake Berlin, thanks for stopping in, man. We appreciate you.
It's because we switched the the camera view like 5 times before the show started.
See, look at it. Producer, we're gonna get fired from our job. Can you believe it? That's our boss right there. Pretty much. No way Packers will get 20 points this game. I can't see it. Dude, neither can I. 34-13. That sounds good to me. Actually, I don't really like Dak Prescott this week either. I'd go 23-13. Yeah, that's right, Star Drew. That's right. Jacob, we got a few topics to talk about before we even get going. Clearly, it's a slow night on the chat, so that allows us a little bit more time to discuss the things we want to discuss, man, which is a plus. It's a win-win for us. We're either helping you out or we're helping ourselves out. So let's go ahead and talk specifically about the trade deadline. It's coming. We talked about it earlier. I just made a trade in one of our fantasy leagues. I'm feeling pretty excited about it, pretty happy with my return on investment. But other people might have some questions, Jacob. So when approaching the trade deadline, do you want your lineup focused around a strong core or good depth? Did you write that question, Jacob? I'm not even joking. Like, I'm going off the record here. Did you write that or did I write that?
No, I did not write that.
Oh,
unless someone's sneaking into our notes and writing stuff.
No. It was totally me. But when you came in and said you made changes to the notes, I assumed that was the change made and forgot that I had wrote that.
Oh, wow. No, I didn't change that. I just added the other stuff. That's all.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I love the question because I came up with it then. So, yes, that's my question to you, Jacob. That's a great question. When approaching the trade deadline, do you want your team focused around a strong core or good depth? And what I mean by that is, I guess I can give my opinion first. And no, I won't forget about you, Jacob, because you got through all of your dark horses and fool's gold today. So we're doing good there. We're making progress. Um, but what I mean by that is when we talk about the trade deadline, ours specifically in a few of our leagues is week 11, right? That leaves week 11, week 12, week 13, week 14, and then we get into the fantasy playoffs 15, 16, and 17. That's 4 whole weeks before we get to the fantasy football playoffs. So you have to think about it. Is your team built to be durable? Or are you riding on a team that you are constantly playing matchups, switching out running backs? Maybe your flex spots are really thought provoking week in and week out. As you get closer and closer to the trade deadline, these are the decisions you have to make. Are you going all in on a few solid few? Or are you taking the time to really have depth, account for injuries down the stretch? What's your approach, Jacob?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because I have a few teams that are in both of those scenarios. And I tip in an ideal world, I want to have the best starting lineup in, but you got to think about this. Like, we're going to have, if I'm not, okay, so it depends on when your fantasy playoffs are, right? So
Yeah,
when do bye weeks end? I know there's bye weeks in week 14. Are there
week
bye weeks in
14.
week 15? So
There
week
are
14 are the
not.
last week of bye weeks, right? Okay,
There are
good.
not.
But look, we still have injuries. Unfortunately, there's going to be more to come. And you do want to make sure you have a little bit of depth there. But in general, I want to have the best starting lineup. And I have a team, in my opinion, our main redraft league, my team was very deep. And it kind of is waiting for a couple guys to get healthy and then it'll be really deep. But it was looking very, very deep. And I was able to do like a 2-for-1. Like I traded Khalil Herbert and Curtis Samuel to get Christian Kirk. And I'm so glad, like, it's looking good because Christian Kirk had a good week. That trade could have bit me. Like, it could have been a bad trade for me. But
Sure.
I'm okay with it now. Curtis Samuel had a great week, too. And I think Khalil Herbert's going to obviously have a good week. I talked about him earlier. But for me, it's like, I think I want to do both if I can, but I would definitely look. We're all trying to get those superstars, right? So if you can do some 2-for-1s, if you have some depth, this is the time to do it because teams are desperate. They need to win.
And that's the key, right? Teams are
Mm-hmm.
desperate. If you're a team that's pushing for the playoffs, you're going all in on some of these guys. And I'll get to that in just a second. I wanted to make sure we got to a viewer question because I've never heard from Kenny Stay Trill before.
Hey,
He
look.
says, would you start Justin Fields over Justin Herbert? And I'm here to tell you, of course I would. Justin Herbert plays San Francisco this week. They're looking filthy. They're getting back their defensive pieces. And Justin Herbert has no pieces. That's right. I don't know why I had to spin it like that. Like I was
Yeah, I
some
mean,
narrative
I
DJ.
agree with you.
Yeah.
Fields has a great matchup. He's going to
Fields has a
run
great
all
matchup
over.
against Detroit.
He's going to run all over Detroit. And Herbert, like he's been struggling. Look, he's been struggling fantasy wise, right? He's not putting up what people are expecting. And it also, he plays that amazing team that Gabe was talking about. But I was going to say, Kenny Stay Trill, first of all, sick name, but also awesome picture, man. Again, I
Oh, we got
think
a picture
our
sighting.
viewers have the coolest YouTube profile pictures.
How
I'm
do
just
you
going to say
see
it.
them, dude? I don't. Is that just him on a
You can't
boat?
see it. He's like sitting on the stairs on a boat in like a Hawaiian shirt, like
Gotta
just
stay
chilling.
trill, bro. He's
Yeah, like
chilling.
just saying, man.
Well, hey,
Our viewers, man, they're killing it.
Kenny, you got a sick profile pic, man. We appreciate you. And if you don't know by now, because you're new to the pod, if we get it right this week, you go with Justin Fields and he succeeds, then you got to like and subscribe, man. We work for our likes and our subscribes. If you don't, if we got it wrong, come back next week. Give us another
Gabe, did
try.
you mention that Herbert has none of his weapons? You might have
Yeah,
mentioned that,
because
but
remember I was like, he has no pieces. That's what
yeah,
I was.
exactly. So
That's
that's
kind of what I
that's
meant.
another thing too. I mean, if Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are healthy, okay, it's a different conversation. But he has nobody.
Yeah, he's got absolutely nada. So I wanted to get to that really quick. But yeah, back to our question. That's kind of my approach. And one of the best examples I have of that is our, long running beer drinkers league, right? My team, people would argue and say, wow, you have one of the best looking teams in the league. Hey, no, what can I say? But in all honesty, calm down. Don't get mad. I know there's
No,
some disagreement here, and there's some
no, it's not
speculation
that. It's
surrounding
you
how.
do, but it's how your team got that way.
Okay, well, hold on, just relax,
But
relax, relax.
the viewers
But
don't care about that.
they don't care about that. But what I will say is no matter what, at this point, I am technically fighting for a playoff spot in that league, and I was even before those trades were
Yeah.
made.
I mean, everybody's 6-3 or 5-4. Like
It's a
everyone
very
who's still in it.
it's a very competitive league.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say in that league specifically, the last trade that I had made, which was to acquire rookie running back from the Houston Texans, can't remember his name.
Dameon Pierce.
Dameon Pierce. I gave up a ton for him and Mike Williams. And sure, Mike Williams, I don't have him back. That kind of contradicts what I'm about to say here. But acquiring Dameon Pierce in that trade allowed me to make a push and really create a top-heavy lineup. Do I have any depth or any idea what I would be doing if I lost, say, CMC next week? I would be screwed. I would be screwed if I lost any wide receiver because I have no depth at all. Right now, I am literally fighting just to make the playoffs. And hopefully then I can reevaluate, look at my lineup, see where my lineup's health is, and then also see what depth I've accrued, obviously on the waiver wire at this point. But that's just something I wanted to point out. And then there's obviously, a couple of other leagues where I feel a little bit more secure, where I'm actually taking the opportunity to do something else. And we can kind of get to that now, which is our next talking point, which are, other trade deadline moves that we're kind of looking at. Players we're looking to either buy or sell as we get into this final week before the trade deadline approaches and passes us. Jacob, this is one of the questions I know you really wanted to talk about. Who's a guy, who's a player, or just a thought process that you have right now as we kind of enter in to this final stage of the trade deadline?
Yeah, I think, and look, we're going to talk a little bit about playoff schedules, but I think right now we need to focus on getting into the playoffs, right? Like we said, there's probably some 8-1 teams out there. Good for you. Good for you. But a lot of us are, even if we're at the top of the standings, we're still fighting for a playoff spot, like you said. So you want to make sure you get there, and you want to make sure you stay there and you get in first. And we were just talking about Justin Herbert. Look, he's been struggling. He might struggle this week. Maybe he won't. Who knows? But after that, weeks 11 through 15, every single week he faces a defense that is bottom 10 against quarterbacks. So basically a top 10 defense in terms of giving up fantasy points to quarterbacks. And a couple of those matchups are Miami, who's first, Las Vegas, who's second, but he plays KC, is going to be a shootout. Arizona, either going to be a shootout or they're just going to blow him out. He plays Tennessee. Week 16 and 17 aren't so hot, but look, people are super low on Justin Herbert right now. We see people in our league trying to trade him away. And I'm like, get him now, because quarterback has never been more crucial than now in fantasy. And I think Herbert is going to get it together. I would love to believe that Mike Williams is going to get healthy and come back. He has Austin Eckler. He's a beast. Josh Palmer's looking good. And I believe in the player. So I think he's easy to acquire right now, easier than ever. So if you need help getting into the playoffs, I think Herbert's your guy. Of course, there's some context in this, right? If you have Justin Fields, don't worry about it. If you have Mahomes, Josh Allen. I was gonna say Josh Allen, but maybe you should trade for Herbert if you have Josh Allen. But if you have a top 8 stud, you're not necessarily worried about it. But I'm just saying, if there's ever a time to trade for Herbert, it's right now.
That's fair, man. No, his schedule is meaty. He's been struggling because he hasn't had the weapons. He's been without Mike Williams now for 2 games. He's been without Keenan Allen pretty much all season. So he's had to rely on the young guns like Joshua Palmer, Austin Eckler, most notably, who's just been feasting in the pass catching game. Goodness gracious, do I regret trading him at the beginning of the season. But Yeah, I get it. And another player, coincidentally, who I would agree that someone you should probably look after, trade after, see if he's out there, is Mike Williams, the guy he's throwing the ball to. Uh, I just think that there's a world where we don't really see a lot of Keenan Allen this year.
Mm-mm.
I've
I don't
never
think
seen
so.
a 30-year-old wide receiver take 9 weeks to come back from a hamstring injury. And when he does, I don't know if he's necessarily going to be the same player he has been. Sure, he's going to get peppered with targets. They're not the kind of targets that Mike Williams sees. Mike Williams is the type of player who, going down the line, is going to be a better bet of a player like Gabe Davis, and where he's going to be that downfield threat that I think is going to see a lot more work than so-called Gabe Davis, and be much more, let's say, what's the word I'm thinking of here? Much more productive with his opportunities, as we saw that he was able to do in limited time this year without Keenan Allen. So Mike Williams is another guy who I'd probably be really interested in trading. And it kind of piggybacks off of what I have to say about this other guy, Jamar Chase, who's currently on, out of fantasy lineups because he is dealing with injury right now.
Mm-hmm.
Cincinnati Bengals are on a bye this week. There's a potential that he could return in week 11. We don't know if that's necessarily the case yet. But my advice to both Mike Williams and Jamar Chase is look at your lineups, look at the teams in your league. How are those teams performing and where are they at? If you're looking to acquire guys like Jamar Chase and Mike Williams, you need to go. You need to look at those teams. If they're pushing for the playoffs, they can't afford to wait for Mike Williams to get healthy. They can't afford to wait for Jamar Chase to come back. If you're sitting pretty on the contrary, looking like you can do okay, giving up a little bit of depth to really improve your wide receiver position in the weeks to follow, then I'd say you're a perfect candidate to target guys like Jamar Chase and Mike Williams. If you're sitting at 6-2, 7-0, maybe even, I don't know. Yeah, well, right now you'd either be 6-2 or 7-0 or 8-0, I guess, at this point. So those positions right there, prime. I would even go as far to say if you're 5-4 right now, 5-3. Those are perfect positions to target players like these. Give up some depth on your bench. Go after these guys who need instant impact players now. They can't afford for these players to come back, wait for them to get healthy. Make a move. Buy them with what you got. They're gonna be needy because they need to win. Play to what you know, play to their feelings, and get those players. I think they're gonna be great for you. And obviously everybody knows that. But some people neglect to think because they just look at these players, especially Jamar Chase, and just like, oh, he's untradeable. He's untradeable. No one's untradeable, especially when you're fighting for a playoff spot. So keep an eye out for those guys as well.
Yeah, I have a question for you. So, what is injured coming back Jamar Chase worth? Because I was trying to upgrade at QB, and I have Jamar Chase in a couple leagues, and obviously redraft, right? And somebody offered me Jalen Hurts for Jamar Chase, and I couldn't do it because, first of all, like
Well,
I have
who's your QB?
Geno Smith, and like, look, I don't. This is my problem. I don't want to depend on Geno Smith to win me my fantasy championship. I don't want to do that. So I was been trying to get another quarterback on my squad, and it's like, first of all, I'd be trading away Jamar Chase, and then also I'm giving a person that I'm going to be competing with, who I do not want to win the championship. I'd be giving them Jamar Chase, gifting them him for their playoff run, and
What
it's
does
like,
your playoff potential look like right now? Where are you? Are you fighting for that playoff spot? Are you a guy that's needy enough to make a
so
move like that? So
that's
what's
the
your record?
team where I have a lot of depth as well.
Okay,
So
okay,
I'm not
okay.
really I'm I'm in the playoff hunt, but I have a lot of depth, so I'm not too worried about it.
Yeah. Then I'd say you probably need to hold off then because I mean
Yeah.
when you look at like just fantasy projection in general, Jalen Hurts has 195 fantasy points. Geno Smith has 170. So 25
He's really
points
not that
more.
far behind him. Yeah. I guess you're right. It's
Well,
not
I mean, 25 points is a
it's a
full game's
lot.
worth. It's a full game's worth. Trust
Yeah,
me,
of
that
course. Yeah.
discretion, that window really gets smaller when you're talking about Trevor Lawrence, who's QB9, and Tom Brady, who's QB13, and they're separated by 6 points. That's a lot closer. But Jalen Hurts and Geno Smith are literally QB5 and QB8 on the year. They're separated by about a game's worth of points, 25 points. So it's a little bit more significant. But to find out that, 5 and 8, and behind them, Geno Smith is actually the last great QB in terms of fantasy production before you hit the drop off. Because after Geno Smith, you have Trevor Lawrence. And Trevor Lawrence has only scored 145 fantasy points on the season. That's a full 12 points higher or lower than Geno Smith. Then there's a huge drop off after that, another 5 points to get to Kirk Cousins. So, I mean, we talk about it, right? You don't want to take Geno Smith into your fantasy championship or into your fantasy playoffs. But, dude, how many more games does he have to give you before you're like, okay, I guess he's doing it for me? Because it's 9 weeks now, and he hasn't slowed down yet. He's had one off game, and he's performing better. And when I say better, I mean more than 10 fantasy points overall than guys like, I mean, I could say these guys, but these guys we already weren't even projecting to be there. Trevor Lawrence, Marcus Mariota, Tua Tagovailoa. Those guys who we weren't even talking about at the beginning of the year in our top 15 discussion. But he's better than Kirk Cousins, Tom Brady, Justin Herbert, Aaron Rodgers, Derek Carr. I mean, Russell Wilson. It's just like, he's doing it, bro. He's doing it. So at some point, you got to respect the game and ride that man to a championship.
My point was, I'm cool with, like, it's not my first choice. I don't love it, but I'm cool with it. Like, I'm good. If my choice is, trade Jamar Chase to start Jalen Hurts over Geno Smith, then I'm just rather keep Jamar Chase and roll with Geno Smith. And yeah, I'm totally fine with that. So I mean, yeah, it just depends. I don't know what it'd have to be somebody where they have a lot of depth and they can offer you an irresistible deal, I think. Or if I was like 3-6, I would definitely trade Jamar Chase, but not for Jalen Hurts. I'd get more positional depth. But but if I'm like 5-4 or above, I might hold because you're gonna need him, and he's a difference maker.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. Jamar Chase is a difference maker. I'm looking at Geno Smith's schedule here.
But again, if he was healthy, you can't trade for him. Like,
no, of course not. We're not having this discussion.
So this is the time to do it.
Yeah,
it's just the way people's brain works. Yeah,
for sure. Are you gonna do the trade, Jacob?
No. I already declined it. Yeah.
Let's talk about.
I just wanted to get just figure out if that was a good move, good move on my part. But yeah.
I wanted to check really quick, but I already know, so I guess I can't buy my time any longer because, I mean, I don't want to be that guy to say like, well, we play in leagues where of course he's not available. But anyways, Deshaun Watson is someone you need to keep an eye on. 3 more games until he makes his inevitable return to the NFL.
Yeah.
And if for some odd reason he's out there on your waiver wire, he's probably a guy you want to pick up. Or maybe if he's out there right now on a roster stashed on that, NIA list or whatever they are, I don't know what that means, in out of action, I don't know, or non-compliant, I have no idea. Whatever it means, if he's sitting out there on a team that's really just not doing anything, a team that, again, can't afford to wait for him to come back, he's another really buy low candidate because it's 3 weeks until he comes. Clearly, you can't make the trade for him 3 weeks from now, but you can do it now where it's 4 weeks from now. You know what I'm saying? So he's definitely a guy who you can buy low, especially if a team is fighting for playoff contention. Say, here, you need pieces now. Take these guys. And then take Deshaun Watson just to see what he does. They have a juicy schedule when he comes back and returns as well. So totally a guy that you can pick up on. So
hey, man,
Deshaun Watson was another one.
You should be that guy who says, he's not available in our leagues, because I was watching a very reputable place report on waiver wire pickups, right? Very well-known outlets, I will say. I'm not going to name them because I don't want to You know, I don't want to. What if they want to hire me in the future? You know, so I don't want to name
Shit,
them.
no, dude, you're first round fantasy forever. Don't you
I
dare.
know, I know.
Continue.
You're right. I'd rather just have control over my own stuff anyway. But they have their waiver wire segment, right? And they're like, Justin Fields is the top QB in waiver wires. I'm like, okay, I play in like 5 leagues with friends and stuff, right? And
Mm.
those are only the leagues that I play in with friends. But he hasn't been available for weeks. And then they're like, Jeff Wilson Jr. is the top running back pick of this week. He hasn't been, nobody dropped him. He hasn't been available in weeks. It's
Yeah.
like, and these are, and I'm not trying to like be an a-hole or anything, but I'm just saying these
Jacob and
are,
A-hole?
these are fantasy analysts who like supposedly play in like these deep leagues and these very competitive leagues. I'm like, what leagues are you playing in that these guys are available? I don't get it. So I think you're right to say that like Deshaun Watson got swooped up in all of our leagues weeks ago. And so just like I would love to play in these leagues where Justin Fields is on the waiver wire still before this week.
Oh my goodness. Of course, right? Yeah, man. I don't know. I don't know. It's an interesting topic to talk about. Let's
Yeah.
talk about we got a few more minutes here, and I know we have a really important topic that's important to you, and I want to talk about it. It's playoff schedule planning. And you have a few players that you want to talk about. So give us a rundown really quick of kind of what you mean by that as we look for this kind of playoff potential. I'm guessing it's schedules, what these players' schedules are in the playoffs. Let me know your thoughts, man. Let me know your thoughts. Let's start with Russell Wilson.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk about this because, like, look, I said earlier, don't necessarily make moves based on playoff schedules yet. But what you can do, you know, if you have an open roster spot, you can play with the idea, okay, let's look ahead a little bit. Don't just find out the week of that your top 12 starting QB has a terrible matchup and you're like, damn, I should have picked up this guy when he was available and I could have been starting him this week, but he's gone now. Don't be the person who just like the new week starts and you're like, dang, I got these guys on a bye week, or my guys have terrible matchups this week. Look ahead and just have an idea, because I was looking at, and we talked about Geno Smith. So I have Geno Smith in the league, right? And I was looking at his playoff matchups. And so if you play 15, 16, 17, he plays San Francisco. Then he plays KC, which I think he'll be fine. Then he plays the Jets, who have been really good. Their defense has been really good this year. So I don't know if I want to start him against San Francisco and the Jets. And I know this is going to sound disgusting, but Russell Wilson. Look, I drafted Russell Wilson. I've suffered many weeks because of Russell Wilson this week, and I get it. See all the hatred for him online. But there's a good chance he figures this out. I'm not saying he's going to go on a 8-game win streak to finish the season and just be the number one fantasy quarterback. No, but he has a really easy schedule going forward. And then in week 15, he plays Arizona. In week 17, he plays Kansas City. So I picked him up, and I might start him over Geno Smith in those weeks, depending on how he plays going forward. So just think about things like that, because Russell Wilson, like, nobody wants to touch him, right? But I'm looking at his schedule. I'm like, wait a minute. Let me throw him at the end of my bench. I might even use him before then, but I might want him in those juicy playoff matchups, because if he figures this out and Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy stay healthy, and it could be one of those things where like he's helping people win championships because everybody counted him out and now he's just balling, because he's not going to, even if the Broncos are out of contention, Russell Wilson is not going to give up. Like, he's going to want to play every game and he's going to want to ball out. You think he likes what's going on right now? No way. He's going to want to show that he's still got it. And I think he's going to show us that at the end of the year. So you're going to want him on your roster. And I like 2 out of those 3 playoff matchups for him.
Yeah, man. Coming off the bye, you got to think they've done some. I thought they would have fired their head coach by now, but it just goes to show it's not always the coach, right? It's the players too. They always got to be crappy as well, I guess. But no, you said it perfectly. Russell Wilson has a great schedule coming up. They're coming off the bye. Can he heat up? Can they finally just let Russ cook? He's got the schedule to do it. He's got the playoff schedule to do it. and he's sitting on your waiver wire right now. I picked him up just as well, Jacob. I picked him up. I'm
Nice.
going to play him this week against Tennessee. I got Lamar Jackson on a bye this week.
Let's
So I'm
ride,
gonna
baby.
very similar predicament.
Oh
You
man.
got two other guys here.
I hope he doesn't screw us over again.
He probably will. Tennessee's
Yeah.
been, they're green in terms of fantasy, but they've been sneakily good. I mean, just look at what they did to who they just Patrick Mahomes. He threw the ball. I just almost dropped an F-bomb there.
You did, but it's okay.
He threw the ball 68 times.
We're a PG-13 podcast. We're good for one F-bomb.
Sure, every once in a while. He threw the ball 68 times to get that kind of production.
Yeah.
They were on him all night, man, and that game went to overtime, 17-17. You don't throw the ball 68 times to envision your team winning 20-17 on a field goal in OT, So their defense has been sneaky. But other than that, he's got a pretty juicy schedule. Brendan Ayuk, Michael Carter are your other two guys. I just kind of wanted to talk about Michael Carter really quick. I like him a lot. A lot of people were rubbed the wrong way by the James
undervalued
Robinson.
Right now.
Yeah, a lot of people were rubbed the wrong way with the James Robinson signing, and it's just not the case. It's not the narrative there. Michael Carter looks good, and Robert Saleh has come out and said they're riding the hot hand. Clearly, he's the hot hand. So I feel comfortable starting him right now in very many different variety as an RB2, as a flex play.
Yeah. He's on a bye week this week, too.
And he's on a bye week, so you might be able to acquire him.
I think
trade.
These two players tie into our trade scenarios, too, is like if somebody needs to win this week and they have Michael Carter, you might be able to grab him. And look at it. Look, he doesn't have the best schedule for the whole rest of the season, but playoff schedule, Detroit, Jacksonville, Seattle. So those are cake matchups. So he could help people win championships this year.
Cake matchups. And then your last guy, Brandon Ayuk, wide receiver for the San Francisco 49ers.
Yes.
Come on, give me 30 seconds. We hear about him every week.
Do we? I feel like we don't. I think and the fantasy industry does not talk about Brandon Ayuk enough, honestly.
I'm tone deaf to it, but let's hear it.
This guy, have you seen what he's been doing this year? I mean, at least since week 5, or at least since week 6, he's been really solid. But my point is, look, Brandon Ayuk, at least to like casual fantasy players, is not like a household name. Yes, he's been on fire the past 3 weeks, but unless these guys like are putting up like 35 or 40, like a lot of people, like I think Brandon Ayuk is acquirable right now for a reasonable price. And then you look at his weeks 10 through 17, amazing schedule. And while Debo is coming back, and you have CMC there, it's crowded, right? Ayuk is our only traditional wide receiver. Excuse me, I don't want to use R when I'm talking about for fantasy, but Ayuk is the 49ers only player that gets enough targets in the traditional wide receiver role. I think even though CMC is there, they're going to mix in Debo and CMC a little bit in that type of role. So I think Ayuk is safe. I think he's still going to get his targets, and I think he's on for a monster end to this season. So if you can get him on your team, I think he can help you get to the playoffs and help you win a championship.
Man, I'm looking at a schedule right now. Pristine. You're right. He had the production without Debo 2 weeks leading up to last week when he still had a great game. So he had put together a string of good games. You add CMC into the mix, he still has a good game. You're right. He's the wide receiver option there. And they got a great schedule, man. He's been doing it. He's been putting up good numbers. That's why people also like Jimmy G. Let's just be honest. People love Jimmy G as a streaming option going the next couple of weeks just because of that schedule, how weak it is, how appealing that is for QBs. And he's a guy that has a safe floor. 20 points is what you need. 20 points is what you'll get with Jimmy G. He doesn't really fail you in that department. So I got to be honest with you. 3 players who I'm perfectly fine playing or trading for because it ties into both segments, right? Mm-hmm. Guys I wouldn't mind trading for who have excellent playoff schedules to come.
And I'm sure Russell Wilson is available on waiver wire still. So
yeah, he's out there. I just picked him up. He's out there. Jacob, it's time, my friend. I know we're over. We miss some stuff every week in and week out. This week, I was just happy to have you back, get a conversation going.
Yeah.
You happy to end the show tonight, man?
Let's go ahead and do it.
Let's do it, dude. I got a hot take before I get out of here. And before I do,
Real quick, are we doing Sunday morning tailgate
we
this
are
Sunday?
doing Sunday morning
Yeah, I'm back,
tailgate.
baby. Let's do it.
We'll be back Sunday morning. We're gonna talk about time though, Jacob. I guess we'll TBD it after this. But
Okay.
yeah, 9 or 9:30 if you want to sleep in a little bit, because it doesn't really matter at this point. But yeah, we're gonna be there Sunday morning for your last minute start sit decisions. I did it last week by myself. It was fun. It was great, but it's always funner. And yes, that's a word with Jacob Bartley in the house. With that being said, thank you so much for coming out today. If you're watching this, listening, please be sure to like and subscribe. Hopefully, we worked for it today. I really hope we do. You can find us anywhere you listen to your podcast, most notably Spotify and Apple Premium. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at First Round Fantasy, or here, if you're looking at our beautiful faces right now on YouTube, please, First Round Fantasy. Hot take of the week. Are you ready, Jacob?
I'm ready.
Let's get out of here with a bang. Terrence Marshall Jr., wide receiver for the Carolina Panthers, has had 2 weeks in a row of 14-plus fantasy points. This week, with PJ Walker back at the helm, he does it again. 3 weeks in a row, 14-plus fantasy points for Terrence Marshall Jr. Go out there, find him, add him, start him. Have a great week. Good luck. Peace.